If you would all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Becker.
Here.
Alderman Schuman.
Here.
Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Alderman Morose. Here. Alderman Osteen.
Here.
Mayor Harmison.
Here. All right, there's no mayor's communications tonight, so we'll move on to citizens' communications. This is a time set aside on the agenda for citizens and visitors to address the mayor and board on any topic that is not a public hearing. For those here in person, speakers will be restricted to 3 minutes unless otherwise permitted. We do have a clock up here to help with your time. Minutes may not be donated or transferred from one speaker to another. Visitors attending online will be in listen-only mode. Any questions or comments to the mayor or board may be sent to the city clerk at tberreth@osagebeach.org no later than 10 a.m. on the board meeting day, which is the first and third Thursday of each month. Submitted questions and comments may be read during the citizens' communication section of the agenda. The Board of Aldermen will not take any action on any item not listed on the agenda, nor will it respond to questions, although the staff may be directed to respond at a later time. The Mayor and Board of Aldermen welcome and value input and feedback from the public. If there's anyone here who would like to speak in person, please come on up and sign the piece of paper right there and let your 3 minutes begin.
Hello, I am Chris Foster. I am here. We're representing the group that has a contract on the outlet mall currently. Wanted to discuss item F and just bring to your attention the item that's before you tonight is to select a financial advisor. And there were 3 options that were given to the city, and upon review, the one option that is currently in front of you is not a viable option for success for us to complete the outlet mall project, to close on the property within the timeline that's been given to us by Simon. We had discussions with Simon today. They are not wavering in their deadline. So in the process, and we've looked at the 2 others, which is Joy Howard, who has done work for the Pruitt's Point, and the other is Todd Goloil, who works for Piper Sandler. Our recommendation would be to get in contact with Piper Sandler as the recommended choice from the developer. Piper Sandler has a nationwide stance. They have done work with the developer and the public relations consultant, the public finance consultant that we have hired, that's John Hansen. So there is experience with both those groups. If that is not, if the timeline doesn't work or if it's not acceptable to the city, the other Joy Howard is also acceptable. But the Columbia Capital Management, we don't see how that is a viable option for success to complete the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anybody else who would like to address the board? All right. Seeing that, we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda. If the board so desires, the consent agenda may be approved in one single motion. It consists of the minutes of the Board of Aldermen meeting, June 2nd, 2022, the bills list, June 16th, 2022, and the liquor licenses. Alderman Morose, are their licenses in order?
Everything is in order, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Do I have any questions or comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Alderman Becker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Morose. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent agenda is approved. All right, first item, unfinished business. Bill 22-35, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing expenditures of funds from the Lake of the Ozark Bike Fest event support request in the amount not to exceed $3,000. This is the second reading. Gina Woods, please.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. The first reading was passed at the last meeting, which Heather Brown did join us to answer your questions and go over details. The request is for $3,000, and so far the board has only committed $2,000, so this is within budget.
Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the second reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Ross, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Morose, roll call, please.
Alderman Osteen,
Yes.
Alderman Becker,
Yes.
Alderman Schuman,
Yes.
Alderman Rucker,
Yes.
Alderman Morose,
Yes.
Alderman Ross.
Yes.
All right, second reading carries. Second item, unfinished business, Bill 22-36, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, adopting an amendment to the zoning map of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri by rezoning a parcel of land as described in rezoning case number 419. Second reading. Carrie Patterson, please.
He's working on the air conditioning.
Carrie's working on the reading, on the air conditioning. All right. Anybody else want to take this? You want me to take it?
You can take it, Your Honor. I haven't been aware of any.
I'll take it. This was read at the last meeting. Ordinance, the City of Osage Beach was adopting an amendment to the zoning map of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, rezoning a parcel of land as described in 419. I believe you all have the maps on this. It's the Board of Aldermen approved is required for this amendment. The 90-day rule. We looked at this on May 10th and forwarded it to the board for unanimous decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anybody who not reviewed this, I'm doing your job, Carrie. So I'm doing your job now. So any other comments or questions regarding the second reading can be addressed to Carrie Patterson. Seeing none. I did all right. We did all right. Do I have a motion to approve second reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Osteen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Schuman. All those, roll call, please.
Alderman Morose,
Yes.
Alderman Rucker,
Yes.
Alderman Ross,
Yes.
Alderman Schuman,
Yes.
Alderman Becker,
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes.
All right, second reading carries. Third item on the unfinished business, Bill 22-37, ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, amending ordinance number 21.78, adopting the 2022 annual operating budget, transfer of funds for necessary expenses for the Transportation Fund, Water Fund, and Sewer Fund. This is the second reading. Gina Woods, please.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. First reading was passed also at the last meeting. This is just a budget amendment to account for some in and outs based on some expenses that we had already discussed at a previous meeting.
All right, any comments or questions from the board? Motion to approve second reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Ross, roll call, please.
Alderman Becker,
Yes.
Alderman Morose,
Yes.
Alderman Rucker,
Yes.
Alderman Ross,
Yes.
Alderman Schuman,
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes.
All right, second reading carries. Last item in unfinished business is a Bill 22-38, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri for additions and amendments to Chapter 405 zoning regulations, Article 5 of signs. Second reading. Carrie Patterson, please.
Yes, I don't have anything further on this particular request, but what I will let you know is that I spoke with Alderman Rucker about the ideology of some controls on the illumination of the signs. And we'll be taking some illumination control for all signage to the Planning Commission at their next meeting. I've done some diligence with the state of Missouri and with some of the other sign companies, and we'll be taking some control to keep signs from being too bright and being a safety issue at night. We don't have anything in the sign code currently. And quite candidly, the amazing thing is that the couple of sign companies that I called thanked me for doing it, because other companies, don't follow rules. And so we'll be taking that to the Planning Commission at the next meeting. But as far as this goes, I have nothing further unless there's questions.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Osteen, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Schuman, roll call, please.
Alderman Rucker,
Yes.
Alderman Ross.
Yes.
Alderman Morose.
Yes.
Alderman Schuman.
Yes.
Alderman Becker.
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes.
All right, second reading carries. On to new business. First up, we have a presentation on the Lake of the Ozarks Magic Dragon Trails. Stacy Pirtle. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for having us. Tonight, we just wanted to come with you. We had been here about a year ago, and you guys approved a amendment for support of the Magic Dragon Trails as we move forward with this. Let you know that we have hired the Progressive Trail Design firm to design a trail for us, and they have given us their master plan. These trails are going to be both hard surface and natural surface recreational trails for hiking, biking, running, trail running, skating. And so in a sense of transparency, we wanted to give you an idea of what they have given to us, because it is going to impact, some of their suggestions would impact some of the city areas. And so we wanted to show you what they've got for you to be thinking about these just a little bit. One of the reasons we started this project was to be an economic driver for the community. Trails generate revenue. They promote a healthy lifestyle. Northwest Arkansas has found that they are generating from visitors to the area $51 million a year, $27 million of that coming from out-of-state visitors to the area. Their direct health benefits were $7 million a year, with indirect health benefits of $137 million a year. We also believe that this is going to attract millennials. They want a sense of community. They want to go, they're not big into driving their cars. And I can attest to that. My 30-year-old son does that. He parks his car, he walks, rides his bike everywhere. They want to have little communities where they can just do that. And some of the things in the connectivity plan that they gave us will allow for that type of development in Osage Beach and the lake area in general. Also, the project will create jobs. We're already seeing that we have interest for bike shops coming in. They're going to need to have repairs for bikes. There's a lot of e-bike sales going on right now. We already have 3 businesses that are selling e-bikes. It also increases property values. They found in a study in Northwest Arkansas that if you were in a quarter mile of a trail, the value of your property increased by $6,500. And that's very similar to what we see with lake prices. If you have lakefront property, that has an increased value. Also, it revitalizes communities. If you look at communities along the Katy Trail, those communities, there were small communities that were dying, and now they've embraced a biking culture, and the visitors that come, and they're seeing revitalized businesses in those areas. This just talks about the economic impact that they found out of the 2018 study. They are actually conducting another study in Northwest Arkansas, and they believe those numbers will even be higher, especially as the pandemic saw an increase in individuals looking for outdoor recreation opportunities.
So as board members of the Community Foundation of the Lake, one of the things that our main purpose is to try to make life better for the citizens of Camden, Morgan, and Miller counties. So we were brainstorming what kind of things we could do to make people provide things for people to do here more year-round, not just for the summer months. And so as a mountain biker for many years, I have spent a lot of time in Northwest Arkansas, and so we thought, why can't we do the same kind of thing here? We already have all the amenities that people need. We have the hotels and motels, and we have ways to get around around the lake, and lots of fun things to do. We just want to be able to have people use those amenities more during the entire year. We have a perfect terrain, not just for mountain biking, but for hiking and using soft surface trails here, because if it rains, you can use those trails the very next day. And some of the greatest recreational destinations in the country can only be used for a few months of the year because of their soil and their cold temperatures and their wet weather. Here we can use things the day after it rains. The temperature ranges are great for being able to use trails all year long. The soil is perfect for it, and also because of all of our rocks and cliffs and drops and ditches and stuff like that, it's a really fun place to go out and spend time on the trail. So I have built and maintained trails as a volunteer for 25 years, basically. And I've done it for many years, ever since we moved here. And one thing I've learned is that you're not going to draw people to a trail system with volunteer-built trails. No matter how great your volunteers are, they're not all civil engineers, and they don't have the equipment to build and maintain these trails. So we want to build world-class trails that are professionally designed and professionally built. By having them professionally designed and professionally built, they are more sustainable, they last longer, they're more usable, they're more user-friendly, and just more fun. And so we're talking about using these trails, both hard surface and soft surface, for bicycling, for rollerblading, for strollers, moms and dads pushing strollers to the ice cream shop on Osage Beach Parkway, jogging, trail runners. We have endurance trail runners here. So we want to have world-class destination trails that people will travel from all over the country to come visit us, to play in the water and to also play in the woods. So we hired Progressive Trail Design Company, and they came for a visit in January. Progressive Trail Design Company is one of the most highly sought after trail design companies in the country. They've been doing it for years. They've just built and designed trails even in other countries. And they came in January and met with us and a group of people.
All right. And as you can see here, one of the first things they did when they came was take a group of us out, and that's right at the old Parkway Plaza where Woods used to be, or Paul's before that. We're standing on the sidewalk there up against Osage Beach Parkway. The speed limit's 45 miles an hour. Now, when we were standing there, they asked us to imagine pushing a stroller and having a little kid on a Strider bike that was 2 or 3 years old with you going along that sidewalk, and how safe you would feel. And as a parent, you're not going to feel very safe along that sidewalk with cars going at 45 miles an hour. Now, I like going 45 miles an hour. I'm not going to tell you I don't like going 45 miles an hour, but we have another option. We have the bypass, all right, which we didn't used to have. So one of the first things that they looked at as a catalytic project for us is taking Osage Beach Parkway from KK to Nichols and making that more bike and pedestrian friendly. And what they're suggesting doing is taking that from the 5 lanes that we currently have, taking those outside lanes and converting those to a bike pedestrian passageway on both sides, all right? And what they call that is a road diet. We're narrowing that road down. We would be reducing the speed limit to 30, 35 miles an hour along there, and then taking those lanes. Now, that doesn't look extremely safe, but you're giving a lot wider space. People need that wide space, and you need at least 12 feet, really, to feel safe to be walking with children and strollers and bikes. So you've got plenty of space there in your lanes. And let's take a look at how they propose or ways that you can do this. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner, that's just striping, doing some striping to get bike lanes in. But if you see in that top picture, you've got a tractor-trailer rig coming down, and if you're riding with that traffic, you can't necessarily see them behind them or hear them. And let's face it, I mean, people are running with along the roadways now, looking at their phones. They've got earbuds or earpods in, listening to music. I saw a kid the other day on W. He was walking. He was looking at his phone. He was facing traffic at least, but he had earpods in, and he didn't know a car was coming at him, let alone one coming behind him. So that's not necessarily the safest way. The next, the bottom left, you can see that they've put up bollards. That's very similar to what they have on KK, all right? And then the more preferred method, or no, KK, or on HH, sorry. The more preferred method and the safest method is to put some type of concrete reinforcement up there so that cars aren't really jumping over a curb. Another option is, if you go back to the left, you can have the bollards and then put the parking blocks in. That also gives a little more permanence to it, all right?
So when we hired Progressive Trail Design, the first thing that we wanted them to do is design a bicycle skills park that would be built by volunteers at the Tri-County YMCA. That is sort of our kickoff for the public to be able to see what's going on and what we're trying to get started and what kind of a culture and lifestyle we can start. And so that's a diagram of what is going on at the YMCA. Has anyone been to the Tri-County YMCA to see all the piles of dirt out there? Michael has? Okay. Thank you, good. As well, those are all being formed into banked turns and ramps and rollers, and we're going to build wooden features where kids will get on a bike, or adults like me, and do serpentine rides or humps over them. And so we're probably about 50% finished with that. We're also having a work day Saturday starting probably at 7 if anyone wants to come and play in the dirt. And so that's the first thing they did, and we're wanting to show the community the support we have by getting this built ourselves. Next. And so those are some of the pictures that we had of one of our skid loaders working on things, and one of the kids riding down one of the rollers, and people just working. We've had a tremendous amount of people come and work very hard in some really hot weather to get where we're at today. And we're very appreciative of what they're doing. So we're wanting to show the community involvement and that we have a lot of people who really want to see some of these things happen. So one of the first places that we'd like to see a trail, and this goes from the very beginning when we were doing it, is that we want to have things close to the businesses on Osage Beach Parkway. And one of the great ways that we can do that is if we have a single track trail going from the YMCA through the property all the way over to basically between Nichols Road and the next one over the Old State Park Road. We have to get the buy-in from the state to be able to do that, and it would be very helpful if the Walk on Water Church would partner with us to let us use some of their property. They would have some great property for us to try to get an easement from them and partner with them to get something built through there. And that would work along with some of these things that we're talking about along the parkway, where people could be traveling up and down the parkway as families on bicycles or strollers or whatever. And then if somebody wanted to go out and hike or ride that trail in the state park, they could get a couple of miles of trail riding in the state park.
This is another area that they've proposed right at the corner of Nichols, and it's kind of the hospital property there, or city property, but then the hospital property butts up against it, potentially putting just a small park there. There's already a grassy area there on that knoll, so that is another area that they're looking to just add some community, a sense of community there. This is what we would like to see eventually the city kind of pattern their future developments for sidewalks, is more of a shared use paved path that are wider and set back away from the street further so that people can feel more comfortable. Those that are, just a foot away from the street, it doesn't make people feel real comfortable. So this is kind of the pathway that a lot of cities are going to now. If you talk with people that are moving into the area, they have these in subdivisions, and whether it be Kansas City, St. Louis, they're used to seeing these. So also we're working with the developers to put shared use pathways in their development where people can use those as well. This is just a general overview of another hard surface path. A lot of this isn't in the city of Osage Beach city limits, but we're also looking at going down KK and Three Seasons Road. Those are more family-friendly areas. You don't have a lot of hills. We're not talking about extreme mountain biking there. Very easy for families to use and access there. And this area is actually at the city park where they've looked at putting trails. I know 10 years ago you had somebody kind of look at putting trails in the city park, and so they've gone back and looked at this. The green lines are natural surface trails around in there, and some of those actually do feed into the state park, where you could have some excellent downhill mountain biking as well. So if somebody's out there watching a soccer game or a softball game, they can go, the parents can go for a hike in between games, the kids can go for a hike or ride as well. And again, we're trying to look at connectivity to take that back up to Osage Beach Parkway, possibly even to the outlet mall if that gets revitalized. So this is just a general overview of the whole plan. We've got about 70 miles of hard surface and soft surface trails, a little over 70 miles that they've designed there, with some interesting features in there, some more skills park areas for people, dog park up by off of KK. And then also at the School of Osage High School, putting in what's called a NICA trail. So it has to be at least 3 miles long and NICA is the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. Those events generally have 600 to 1,000 participants alone, let alone the parents, and those are kids from the age of 6th grade through seniors in high school. So those events just have 600 to 1,000 participants. Obviously, they're bringing parents, family members with them. We have actually talked with the NICA officials. They love the idea of us getting NICA trail and team here at the Lake of the Ozarks. They would love to have their state tournament here because it's centrally located and it is a destination that people want to come to. We're also looking at getting, you can't see it on this map, but also a NICA trail at Camdenton High School as well. And they've got, both facilities have plenty of property there. The biggest thing with the trails is, we want to get the whole family back to nature. My family started coming here in 1955. My dad started coming in 1955. I came here as a child. My son came here as a child. And we really want to see that family type of activity and being able to enjoy the natural beauty at the lake. Also, we've got adrenaline rush. We'd like to see this become kind of an adrenaline capital. Bentonville and Northwest Arkansas have the market on mountain biking. They are the mountain biking mecca right now. They bring in a lot of conferences, biking conferences, international bikers. They host huge mountain bike races. But we want to be an adventure capital where you can do boating, you can kayak, you can do trail running, you can do zip lining, all of those type of features and facilities, wakeboarding. And we want to be able to show that we can find a balance with a new skills at any age for kids that is a healthy activity for our kids. We also see this as a way to keep our kids here. We don't want to see that brain drain going to the big cities. We want to be able to have features that our kids want to stay at. They don't want to leave the high school and go to college and go to the big city. We want them to be able to stay here. We also believe that we can have millennials who have discovered and Gen Xers who have discovered that they can work from anywhere right now, based on the pandemic, that these are the type of facilities that they want in their lives. Thank you very much, and we're open to any questions.
Questions from the board?
Obviously, this is just in the very beginning phases. We're not saying we want you to do this right away, but we want you to start thinking about it.
Alderman Ross.
So I have 3 questions. One is, can we get a copy of this presentation?
Of the presentation itself?
Yeah.
Certainly.
Somehow send it to the clerk or someone
Yep.
that could get it to us. Secondly, if I understand this right, you're wanting the side of the parkway, west side, I hate using the word side, but to reduce that to 2 lanes of traffic, is that what 3 lanes. So, okay, so there'd be a turn lane in the middle, but 2 lanes of traffic, okay.
And we're not saying we want that. We want you to start thinking along that, thinking with the road diet.
Okay, and then the last thing, and it was hard to tell from those ways away, but the STIP project that is coming up next on the, does that tie in, work with, work against, and we may not know the design yet, but what they're talking about over by Osage High School?
The project that we're applying for the Osage High Schools to go parallel with 42 to connect our other sidewalks eventually that are on that side. It's on the other side of the road
Okay.
where they're talking goes.
Okay.
But that was something we would like you to consider in the future as you're looking at those type of projects, is to potentially move those back away from the roadway a little bit, or maybe even consider going behind buildings where it becomes a little bit safer. Actually, at the School of the Osage, they have a trail designed in there that can become an outdoor classroom. It's just an educational trail for hiking and biking, and also at Camdenton. So, but they're off behind in the areas.
I just think the funding for those are much harder, so I guess we'll have to work on that challenge. That's all I have, thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Schuin?
So I know that we're working on our Parks Master Plan, and they talked about some stuff with the parks. Is this like in conjunction with it, or do we know anything about like how that works with what we've already got started for the parks, or?
Well, we don't have anything in conjunction, but we're at the beginning. So one of the tasks I know we've already talked about internally is once their master plan is at some point and we start doing our research, that information will be helpful in completing our master plan.
Okay.
We want the Parks Department and what we're doing to all be fully informed of what each other has done. So we're not duplicating effort and duplicating expense, but also to really open up our minds to what other things can be done and added that maybe we wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Anyone else?
I would just, excuse me, I want to say that at last year's MML conference, which is the Missouri Municipal Leagues, for those that don't know those acronyms, we were sitting at a table with, and I don't know what city the gentleman was from, but it was a mayor from another city that was working on trails, bike trails. And and we had made some kind of comment that we had a presentation. And the comment was made, and just something for you to think about, as well as us as we move forward with this, that there's a couple other cities around the state of Missouri that are starting to do the trails, not the mountain ones, because we don't have the mountain ones that much, supposedly. And I'm no biker at all, but that it may be something that as we move forward that could be tied to where some people would say, well, I don't want to go just do that trail. But if there's multiple trails within a short distance, they would come here and spend 2 days, 3 days, more the merrier, and then they would go down the road to another city that's within our state, and it would be something that would draw, because apparently, and again, I wish I could remember which city that was that's on the move with it. Do you
I think it was
remember?
I was sitting there. I think it was Potosi. It's down around that area in Washington County, where there's a lot of elevation change.
Right.
That makes sense. Ironton had
It may be
downtown
Ironton.
park done. They got it all done within a year, because it was a short window.
That's just something
Because
to
they have a
think
lot of
about
elevation
as we-
change, and they do
And that's a
races.
very good point that I should have noted. I did meet with the city administrator of Eldon with the Rock Island Trail. Now, that's very much a flat trail. It's more of or running trail. It's easier. It's, not the mountain bike trail. But definitely, we want to tie in with that. There's an old Bagnell line, came down railroad that we could get very close to the high school on. People are already using it for running already. So definitely we're looking at that. Also, if people are riding along that Rock Island Trail as they get that done, having a trolley system to bring people down here is another potential business venture. So
One thing interesting that you brought up, though, is about having different choices, different kinds of trails. One of the things that they try to do is make trails that can be fun for beginners as well as expert riders. And over the years, trail companies have gotten much better at doing that, and instead of just going straight up the hill and straight downhill. But one of the very specific one was up above the city park. They had one where you would have 1 or 2 ways going up that wasn't very hard to get up to the top, and then you'd have like 4 places heading down. All these different colors show different difficulties of trails, so you could send a 10-year-old up there and they could ride down and have a really fun time and do that several times. And then maybe they'd go from the green trail to the blue trail, which is a little bit harder. But you could also have a black diamond trail, just like on ski slopes. You could have a black diamond trail where you might have some jumps for the adrenaline people, not me. but it's all compacted there into a small area where your family isn't very far apart from each other. And if the parents wanted to sit down at the bottom and just check on their kid every time they came back down and went back up to the top, they could do that. It makes it a good mixture of things.
Alderman Osteen.
I know this is in the very preliminary stages, but at the end of the day, it's all about the dollars. So my recommendation to you is to come back to the board at a later date, having done some research to see what grants or foundations are available for the city to offset the cost should we decide to move forward with doing something like this.
actually, and we see this as a public-private partnership. We're going to start a capital campaign, probably when we do our grand opening for the Bike Skills Park, and we've already started researching grants and that type of funding.
Yeah,
So-
I knew
Yes.
they had.
Definitely. We're not looking for any tax increases. We're not looking for the trails themselves for really any type of commitment from a local government entity.
I think a lot of it could be privately subsidized. I sit on the board of the YMCA, so I'm very familiar with the project you're doing there. So when you ask who's been there, I'm like, yes, I've been there several times, so.
And in this master plan that they gave us for phase 1 of this last night, they do have cost estimates on what would it cost if you actually had unlimited money and you wanted to build a pedestrian bridge across Highway 54 and things like that. So, and we know sort of what the costs are for single track building and things like that. So we're pretty far along in getting ideas, and she's studied a lot on getting grants and from the federal, state, and local governments that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot of what we want you guys to do is to really listen and then start finding out from your constituents whether they want something like this on Osage Beach Parkway and in their neighborhoods. We have had outstanding feedback from the public, but we want you guys to take that into account and start actively looking into making this happen, finding funding sources too as we research it also, but to really take an active role in pursuing this and seeing if you and your citizens want this to be a part of your city plan.
Anyone else? Well, I'll also say on a personal, for me at least, I had the opportunity to go down to Bentonville, Arkansas with these folks about a month or so ago and tour some of the bike paths, the bike trails, and you talk about the Black Diamond. There's some that I wouldn't have gone to in my younger days, but the vision of Osage Beach Parkway and what they show, if you ever just Google Bentonville bike trails, bike paths, they basically drive around town on a bike. There's one brand new office building that they had a ramp upside this great big office building. People literally drive their bikes to office, into the building, into their office room, drive home. Not that we'll ever do something like that, but keep an open mind as they move forward. This would be absolutely wonderful, family oriented, and I thank you both for coming here.
Let's face it, with gas prices
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
better and better.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And they do have motorized bikes for some of us.
Oh, yeah. All right, thank you. Next thing, we have Resolution 202204, a resolution of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, supporting the application for MoDOT's Rural Statewide Transportation Alternative Program Fund for the Highway 42 Sidewalk Project. All right, Mike Welty, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is just simply a request for board support for our next TAP grant application. We are proposing to build a sidewalk from Columbia Avenue all the way down to the School of the Osage, which would go past the city park. I should note, based upon the presentation that just happened, this is a sidewalk that would go right along the side of the road. It would go past our park, and it would go all the way up to that intersection between the two schools a little further down. We have been in contact with MoDOT's Central Regional Engineering staff, and they have told me that they are in full support of this, and they feel like it would be a very competitive, very high-scoring project for this grant process. The supplemental agreement to have Cochran work on this is next on the agenda. I do recommend approval.
All right, thank you very much. Questions or comments from the board? Alderman Rose.
Yes. Obviously, we have a sidewalk project in place for the city of different places that are prioritized or whatever, along with driveways, and which we've already talked about. So I'm thinking about timing. Are you saying that this would be ahead of our planned program for our sidewalks we've already got in place?
No, ma'am. The sidewalks that we have in place, the ones that will run past Central Bank on the Parkway, and then the other one close to Deerbergs, those projects have already been approved by the board. Those projects are scheduled to begin construction in mid-July and be done probably in early fall. What I am proposing here is a sidewalk project, assuming we get the grant, for the 2023 budget year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alderman Rucker?
Mike, does this go all the way down to the stoplight in front of the schools?
Yes.
Okay, because the important part about that is that way the middle school children that would be wanting to access the school, once they get to that stoplight, there is a crosswalk over there to get them to the other side of the street. So I just want to make sure it went to that point. Good.
Anyone else?
One quick-
Alderman Ross?
So, Mike, if I understand, I'm looking at page, I think it's 87, but.
It is.
Is that from the sidewalk master plan? Because it's listed as number 4. So if that's the case, is that the 4th highest project that was rated?
That's correct.
Okay. So this is a way to get state funding for one of our higher projects. Okay, that's what I thought. Just want to make sure. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Ross, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, resolution passes. All right, next for new business. Bill 22-39, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute supplement agreement number 7 to the professional service agreement with LOR Engineering, LLC, doing business as Cochran Engineering, for engineering services related to applying for a grant funding through MoDOT's Rural Statewide Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP. Funding program, as well as engineering and construction phase engineering for new Highway 42 sidewalk in the amount not to exceed $91,971. This is the first of the first and second reading.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Yes, this is a first and second reading. This grant application process moves very quickly. We must have this grant turned in by mid-July, and so that's why I'm asking for a first and second reading on this all at the same meeting. The city would be responsible for paying Cochran $2,500 for the application fee, and that is the only fee that we would pay them in the 2022 year. Assuming that the grant was approved, then we will be budgeting for this in the 2023 budget. And if we get that grant approved and everything works out, the city would have a 25% match on this project. So it would be a 75 on the state side, 25% on the city side. And again, this would take a sidewalk from Columbia Avenue all the way down to the intersection between the schools. I do recommend approval.
All right. Any questions or comments? Do I need to reread this, or can we do it in one vote?
You read it once.
Yeah.
You call first reading, and then yes, you need to read the title.
All right, do I have a motion to approve first reading?
So move.
Alderman Morose, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Schuman, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, now I get to reread it again, folks. Second reading. Bill 22-39, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute supplemental agreement number 7 to the professional service agreement with LOR Engineering, LLC, doing business as Cochran Engineering, for engineering services related to applying for grant funding through the MoDOT's Rural Transportation Alternative Program, TAP, funding program, as well as engineering and construction phase engineering for new Highway 42 sidewalks in the amount not to exceed $91,971. That's the second reading. Any other questions or comments from the board? Now you have one. Alderman Osteen, okay.
I do have one question, Mike. The 91,971 is on this amendment on a few locations, but I'm confused on how the 130,88072 is listed as our out-of-pocket.
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
80.
Okay, so the 91,971 is the engineering agreement. That's what you are agreeing to today. But what I am doing is I am theorizing using the estimated cost that if we included construction and engineering, the city's overall cost, again, just based upon the engineer's estimate, would be $138,072 total, including both construction and engineering.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve second reading?
Motion approved.
Alderman Ross, do I have a second? Alderman Becker, roll call, please.
Alderman Morose,
Yes.
Alderman Schuman,
Yes.
Alderman Rucker,
Yes.
Alderman Ross,
Yes.
Alderman Becker,
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes.
All right, second reading carries. Next, we have Bill 22-40, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, approving a professional services agreement with the law firm of Gilmore and Bell for services relating to the consideration of the Tegatoff Development Project, for the preserve at Sycamore Creek, Chapter 353 and Chapter 100 proposal. This is the first reading. Mr. Rucker, please.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. First, I'd like to recognize Jeff Tegatoff in the back and his team sitting beside him. They're here. They have proposed a residential development at Sycamore Creek that will be called the Preserve at Sycamore Creek. The proposal is to use Chapter 353 tax abatement on the real property taxes on that property and Chapter 100 for some abatement on terms of sales taxes for the materials necessary to construct the project. We have two things on tonight. This ordinance will allow us to hire Gilmore Bell for professional services. The city has not used a Chapter 353 before or a Chapter 100 before. Those are new to us. What we have done is we have basically modeled this off our TIF policy and TIF proposals that we are more familiar with. So the developer is submitting a funding agreement that is the next item to approve. The developer has already submitted a deposit check, the mayor has, and I assume the clerk has stored it safely in the safe, right? Okay. And then we will have Mr. Spikerman and Gilmore Bell advise us in terms of how to do this. We have received a application package that basically follows what you've asked for from TIF applications in the past. We've received one of those already from this developer. So this is the start of this process. It's kind of new to us, but it's not new to Gilmore Bell, and it doesn't seem to be new to Mr. Tegatoff and his team, who seem to know what they're talking about. So at this point, this allows us to hire Gilmore Bell to proceed with the consideration of the project.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Alderman Becker.
Attorney Rucker, can you explain the Chapter 353 again, how that works?
Oh, gee, that's why I wanted to hire Mark Spikerman. Okay. Basically, what it does is it will abate the property taxes the property currently pays, okay? And those property taxes don't go anywhere. They're simply not paid, and that saves the developer costs and expenses.
So here's my question. Since the city doesn't levy a property tax, how is this under our purview?
The state of Missouri's legislature has created this program and says it is.
So we're making the decision for Camden County.
Yes, you have that authority. Unless
Okay.
Mark tells me different, that's the way I understand what the process works.
Good.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Ross.
So I know we spoke a little bit about this during our strategic planning, but do we have any perspective on what type of administrative challenges this may be since it's new to us? And if so, does that mean we're going to need any additional resources and who pays for that administration? I'm not talking about the Gilmore Bell piece, but the implementation after the fact.
I don't have a direct answer for you. I don't expect it to be much different in any other agreement that would follow, just like we do TIFs and CIDs when we determine those. We will be keeping an eye on those because that's what we promised when we talked last week, to be conscientious of what staff requirements are after all these get moved forward.
Alderman Russ, in fact, the two tools that the Tegatoff Development Project proposes to use do not move money around. They simply stop money from progressing out of a developer's
So we're not a
pocket.
pass-through.
So it's not like we're going to have to manage a cash flow or manage a special allocation fund the same way we do in a TIF or a CID that might raise some money.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, do I have a motion to approve first reading?
Motion approved.
Alderman Ross, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Rose, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, next we have Bill 22-41. This will be the first and second reading. First reading, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, an ordinance approving a funding agreement for consideration of the Tegatoff development proposal for Chapter 353 and Chapter 100 support for the preserve at Sycamore Creek project. Any comments or questions about the first reading? Alderman?
I'm just confused on the process. The previous ordinance was just the first reading, which was for the services agreement, but we're doing a first and second for the funding for that agreement.
Yes, sir.
Somehow it seems.
That's me. I'll tell you
That
right
seems
now.
incorrect to me, like we should be doing a first and second reading of the previous amendment as well.
You guys know I am a bear about trying to separate first and second readings. The reason that we put on the funding agreement for a first and second reading on the same night is because Mr. Tegatoff is here. And if you do the first and second reading on the same night, okay, then that will allow the mayor to sign the funding agreement at the end of the meeting, okay? And as the gentleman has brought in the deposit check, he can leave with the signed funding agreement in his hand.
So we will have approved the funding, but we will not have approved the service.
You will approve receiving his money.
I was just questioning the process. I'm all for it, but I'm just curious on the process.
No, what we're doing is we're taking his money first, okay?
Okay.
But we're not speeding up spending it. But I wanted to be certain that when I talked to his counsel, Patrick, I said, if your client wants to be here that night, I will put this on for first and second reading so that he can leave with a signed copy. And that's the method behind my madness.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve first reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second? Alderman Becker, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now I'm going to read this again to you. Third time, ready? All right, Bill 22-41, ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, an ordinance approving a funding agreement for consideration of the Tegatoff development proposal for Chapter 353 and Chapter 100 support for the preserve at Sycamore Creek project. Second reading. Do I have any comments or questions on the second reading? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading? Alderman Morose. Didn't I see your hand go up? Okay. Do I have a second? Alderman Schuman. Roll call, please.
Alderman Rucker.
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes.
Alderman Becker.
Yes.
Alderman Schuman.
Yes.
Alderman Morose.
Yes.
Alderman Ross.
Yes.
All right, second reading carries. All right, next. We have first and second reading, Bill 22-42, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, approving a professional service agreement with Columbia Capital Management, LLC, for municipal financial advisory services relating to the consideration of the Osage Beach Marketplace, LLC proposal and TIF plan application for the redevelopment of the Osage Beach Outlet Mall under the Real Property Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Act. This is the first reading. Do I have any comments or questions from the board? Alderman Osteen.
It is my understanding that the city as well as Camden County has utilized the services of Piper Sandler in the past for this type of work. I'm just curious on why we're not using a company we've worked with previously that we can personally vet for the work they've done for us. Why are we going outside what we have
Well,
used
let me
previously?
start over with
Yeah, I was
explanation.
supposed to ask
That's fine, I'll start
ask
over.
her to
and
read
hopefully
it
I'll
to
answer.
us, so my apologies, I was jumping the gun.
That's okay, I thought he was getting me out of a task. So this is a request to approve a financial advisory agreement for an independent financial advisor in this step in the TIF or CID process that we've done before. One nuance I will say, how I got to this, to be fully transparent with the board, does not fit our purchasing code policy, but because of the timeline and because of the time difference between the TIF commission decision and the board. So the purchasing code, our code meets requirements to hire professional services. We do not, if it's engineering, you have to go by state statute, but financial services and those other services, we can do qualified requests for proposals. Because of the timeline, I did not do that in a formal method. I did that informal, and given that this cost point should have probably been formal, but given the timeline to meet the intent of the board, it was informal. So I solicited references and referrals from different companies. They need to be independent per the SEC and the Dodd-Frank Act, which is new in the last decade, actually a little over a decade. So out of those referrals, let me go back. So the qualifications for professional services are not on cost, but on expertise, experience, time capacity, and there's one more, and I'm slipping, qualifications of staff. So out of the referrals that I quickly did, one of them we have worked for before, but not at this capacity and type of project. The other one did not, in my opinion, prove the independence required by SEC and the Dobbs Act. This company they are highly experienced in this type of projects. They've worked with this multi-divisional, multi-$100 million projects before. They have a team that is qualified. They met all the requirements in our financial, and I did all the references come back. So I put this before you because of the timeline, and it's also first and second reading to keep it moving by the 27th. They will catch up. They assured me they could get caught up to provide the services they need from this point on. I know I've had a few questions. If this one isn't, I'll be glad to go back and start the proposal service or process again. I can still do it informal, but this is what I recommend. It meets all the qualifications and expertise
Okay.
for our financial services that do work for the city and has to be independent. That's a big one.
Thank you. Alderman Olstein now.
My secondary question, are we aware of any conflict of interest between this company and the developers for the TIF program?
So they did submit a standard disclosure with their contract. They state that there are no legal conflicts, I guess is what, there's no conflicts of interest. They are registered with the SEC, and they have stated in that disclosure another area that mentioned that as well, that there is no other third-party payments and no legal conflicts or conflicts of interest contradiction. And that's really the level that we check.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? Alderman? I'm sorry, Alderman Ross.
It's okay. So a few questions. One, financial, I guess, advisory services seems broad to me. So I'm trying to understand, because this is new to me, haven't ever bonded one since I've been around, and I assume this is being driven by the request for bonding.
Correct. It is driven solely and directly on the request for public funding.
Okay. All right.
Yep, that's so short.
So how does their services differ than PAGV services or PGAV?
So PAGV is your economic-based cost-benefit analysis leading up to that.
Okay.
Some of that same, they I don't want to say they will overlap because this is a totally different registered SEC purpose with this company. They will evaluate all tax increment financing, CID, TDD, incentive support that involves the request for public financing when it comes to the bonds. They will review any third-party revenue and feasibility studies, which is really what your PGAV does.
Okay. And I assume that, so these are being reimbursed by the developer, and Mr. Foster was here and said that they're struggling with that with this company. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'd be curious if he could answer why that is. Maybe that would have been more appropriate prior, but okay, maybe I'll leave that alone, I guess. How is this report affect or not affect the timelines with the special meeting that's been announced? In other words, would we expect it to have been completed by that meeting, and would it be important to that evaluation?
Well, they have to get caught up, and
Okay.
what they're going to get caught up will be a trigger point for what that redevelopment agreement looks like, because that's going to have your financing and public financing details, those type of things in there. So is the expectation that the financial advisor will have a finished report by the 27th? I guess it depends how quickly we get a redevelopment agreement, but they follow the public financing. They will get caught up as soon as a redevelopment agreement is decided upon, and then move into the public financing piece. The contingent or non-contingent fees are what is developer reimbursed typically. If we get to the point where public financing, issuing of bonds, then their services then have a portion of per $1,000 bonds, because they assist in that complete process, which is where PGAV ends in the initial analysis.
Okay. So it sounds like at least a portion of their work would be critical to the redevelopment agreement.
What is a fair statement?
Okay. And so if we don't utilize these folks, which is what's been requested by Mr. Foster, then that could potentially delay the ability to have the critical information by the time he needs. So that's where I'm challenged, because I have no problem at the end of the day not supporting this if they want to risk that time. But at the same time, if it puts the ability to come to an agreement in play by, which I still think is a challenge with or without this, to be quite honest, then I'm not sure why we would not utilize these people.
Can I follow up with that? And then a couple things. This is an independent financial advisor that works for the city. If the board, we followed our guidelines, they fit the expertise, the qualifications to do this job. They've proven that with their references and past practice. No indication was given to me in talking in length with the company that they would slow us down, that some of the pieces that we are still working on, they would need to catch up to do their job. So I am not made aware of where there's a time. They're on our time schedule?
No, let me be clear. I'm talking about if we were not to utilize these people tonight and to, for example.
That was my next comment.
Okay, go ahead.
So if the board is not comfortable with my due diligence at this point, I will be glad to go back and do a second round of informal, find another, but that is not going to happen tonight. We'll put it on the next regular meeting, which could affect what happens. I can't answer that for you all. I would just encourage you to follow our practices on getting a qualified financial services. So if you want me to go back to the drawing board, I'll be glad to do that, but that can't be solved tonight.
Sure.
Yeah, so that could affect the timeline. I thought I had one more thing to answer. I'm sorry, because I was just speaking too fast. I'm done.
Alderman Osteen had something?
Jana, would you necessarily be going back to the drawing board because you've already received the recommendations or the documents you needed from Piper Sandler?
Okay, they do not prove the innocence the independence needed, because this type of services, the company's registered with SEC. I'm not saying that the particular person, but Piper Sandler, which used to be Piper Jeffrey, are also part of the buy and sell side, and you have to keep an independence from that. That is, I would not recommend a company that I feel has any kind of relationship with the buy and sell side, because that's what Congress changed back in 2010 in that act, is they have to be totally independent to work for us as the government, to advise us on any of the public financing pieces. I did not feel that one, and no against any, I'd hate to talk about someone when they're not here now. Again, I took very serious the capacity of the company and the size of project, because they all can be a case-by-case basis. We don't have a standing agreement with this service, this type of service, and nor would I probably recommend that, because as we get these, they're all a little different. So I went by those standards. I would sort of be starting over, because I eliminated what I feel is appropriate reasons, the other two.
Alderman Becker.
So Jeannie, excuse me, you're not aware of any time issues, as Mr. Foster stated, with Columbia Capital?
They did not indicate that they would have any problem meeting the very escalated timeline and expectations that's being put forth to this point that I've read in the information we've got.
Okay.
I'm just going to go ahead and say for the record too, and I did have a conversation with Mr. Foster today of the events, how this happened, and I think I conveyed this to most of the board member. After our meeting last Monday, the very next day, because we're working on such a tight time schedule, Mark Spikerman did email us and let us know. He said he suggested we get a financial advisor as soon as possible. And he goes on to say, it serves a few main purposes. The financial advisor can provide input on the draft redevelopment agreement regarding milestones, triggers, and safe harbors related to the project financing. B, the financial advisor can advise the city on the marketability and feasibility of any project financing. And C, if and when the time comes, the financial advisor can assist the city in engaging a bond underwriter. It would be beneficial to have the financial advisor assist on A and B prior to the June 27th meeting. I know the city used Joy Howard as a financial advisor at the Pruitt Point. Does Joy have a standing engagement with the city already? She has plenty of experience. We can provide other referrals if needed. And this was at 9:49 the next morning after the special meeting, knowing we're on the timeline. Within the next hour, Gina did let him know that we did not have a standing agreement with Ms. Howard or anyone else, or do we have the time to go through the process per our policy. However, I would like for you to send us other referrals for the financial advisors to allow us to do some due diligence within the tight schedule. Can I get those in the next hour or so? I would prefer the board approve the said engagement due to the factors surrounding the timeline and our policy. Should be no problem to amend the agenda for Thursday. Ed and I will work on this today and tomorrow to meet the schedule. Then he came back with 2 other proposals. The 3 of us sat down and discussed those. I had met Joy last week at the MML conference. It was noted that Piper Sandler was very experienced working on the Jefferson City Redevelopment Historic State Penitentiary. And also they said that Columbia Capital had worked with Legacy Development Deal in Shawnee, Kansas, and had worked on large TIF details for St. Louis County and other municipalities. So it was at that time that the 3 of us, knowing the time delay, we all agreed that this guy had experience, and it was of my opinion that experience was helpful in this case, because if he's already shows some experience rather than starting from ground zero, it might help move things more along. So that's what had happened, and I explained that to Mr. Foster and most of you, but I just wanted that for the record that we were moving quickly, weren't singling out, we're not aware of any possible conflicts of interest until I spoke with Mr. Foster. So just full transparency, that's what happened at this point. Alderman Rose.
Isn't it true that there was some difficulty in Shawnee, Kansas, with Legacy? And I'm saying that as far as history or whatever, and just, I know that there's always difficulty with any large entities, but as far as the due diligence on the companies that you considered, that
Well, in my due diligence, I did not make a phone call to Shawnee, Kansas, who had hired the company. The references given, let's see, I think there were 2 on here that I did inquire, but I did not speak to anybody directly to Shawnee, so in direct knowledge, no. And I did not hear anything otherwise, and the standard disclosures they're giving us doesn't state any legal conflicts of interest, but I don't know firsthand knowledge. I did not call that particular city.
And this Columbia firm dealing with Legacy, I mean, it's still been copacetic in the past. I mean, has there been, what I'm saying, I don't want to continue with a company that even though they had some dealings with Legacy, but maybe it wasn't all on the positive, and then having us start off with a bad foot. And that's why I'm thinking maybe we ought to go with Piper Sandline.
You're going to have an independence issue with that one. The due diligence I do is I check references, past projects beyond the one that Mark Sparkman said he has worked with the developer before. It went beyond that to do my due diligence, beyond just that city. I did not talk to that city.
Okay.
And as far as that, experience, capacity, employee, that's my standard of due diligence. I don't have any other firsthand knowledge behind that.
And for the record too, this bill here either passes or fails. You cannot reword it to take them out and insert another one. This simply would not pass, and then we'd have to look for another financial advisor.
And I'll be happy to go through that due diligence process with others. I'll be happy to do that. But that might, it's your timing, it's your financial contract.
Alderman Rucker.
So, excuse me, I think you just kind of made it clear. If we choose to not enter into agreement with Capital, then you're saying that what you need to do is go back to the drawing board, because the other ones you've already felt that they would be not the firms that we would want to use, and you'll have to go back and re-solicit for people to do that.
Fair statement. In my opinion, I eliminated the other two, and you not picking this one doesn't change my mind on that elimination, and I'll be glad to go get other informal proposals to consider and reconsider those. I have no problem doing that. That's part of my process.
A comment? Gina, I'm sure you've done your due diligence, but we say go back to the drawing board. Well, the drawing board started on Tuesday, and it's Thursday. It's not like we are basically saying we're going to go back and have to kill another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. You just started this process to secure one of these companies on Tuesday. So back to the drawing board isn't that much of a stretch.
I
Just
will
throwing that out there
ensure
for
you, I will
consideration.
make it a priority, and I'll do what I can. I
Want to clarify everybody's
I'll
thought
be
process on back to the drawing board.
Alderman Ross.
If we go back to the quote drawing board, the next time that we're going to be meet for consideration is July 7th, which
That
is
is our next
after
regular meeting.
the June 20th meeting. And I will just say this up front, I'm not going to vote for any redevelopment agreement without somebody like this reviewing it and giving their advice. That's all I have.
Alderman Becker? No?
I would just say that we are hiring these people. It is our responsibility to the citizens of our community to hire someone that we feel can provide us with information so that we can make the best decision for this city. And they are being hired by us and being paid by us through funding that has been available through an agreement that has been made. So I think we're the boss, and we're the ones that need to have somebody that we're comfortable with. And I believe our staff and the mayor, who's not our staff, but has done due diligence. And I believe that we need to follow what they've done. They've suggested it. And I don't have any problem following it. And I agree with Alderman Ross. We need this. As we'll talk about it later, I went through quite extensively a lot of work in the last day and a half because I'm not going to be available until after July 1st. And I've really done a lot of digging, and there's a lot of questions that people like this can answer that I have. And if we want to move this thing on quickly, which we've been told over and over, and we at the TIF meeting, for those of you that weren't there, it was made clear over and over. We're under a time crunch. We're under a time crunch. Well, we're trying to be under a time crunch too, and this is to keep things moving as quickly as possible. So with that, I would want to consider keep moving it quickly as possible and go ahead and approve these people. That's all I have.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve first reading?
So moved.
Alderman Becker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Schuman. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion carries. First reading. Second reading, Bill 22-42, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, approving a professional service agreement with Columbia Capital Management, LLC, for municipal financial advisory services related to the consideration of the Osage Beach Marketplace, LLC, proposal and TIF plan application for the redevelopment of the Osage Beach Outlet Mall under the Real Property Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Act. Second reading. Gina Woods, do you have anything else?
I have nothing more to add unless you have more questions.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Do I have a motion to approve second reading?
Motion to approve second reading.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Ross, roll call, please.
Alderman Burrows.
No.
Alderman Rucker.
Yes.
Alderman Ross.
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
No.
Alderman Becker.
Yes.
Alderman Schuman.
Yes.
All right, second reading carries.
Did she say
All right. Next on the new business, resolution 2022-02, a resolution of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, supporting the application for the Missouri Department of Natural Resource Financial Assistance Center State American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, or ARPA, grant program for wastewater. Mike Welty, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This resolution is a little bit different than the one we talked about earlier. The one we talked about earlier, we already had some basic cost estimates to include for you guys. This one, I don't have any cost estimates to include for you guys yet, and we are on a time crunch. And normally, if I had more time within the grant process, I would have that stuff in front of you right now. But the timeline just does not allow me to have that in front of you right now. With that said, I do have Dave Van Leer and Kevin Crooks working on preparing cost estimates, and they will give me those in time for us to meet the application deadline. The application deadline is July the 14th. We are asking the board to support this application based upon a few parameters. Number one, the wastewater application has a limit of $5 million, and we are allowed to group multiple projects together as long as the cost stays within the application limit. And for what it's worth, we don't have enough time to find enough projects to even reach 5 million. So we're not going to get close to the 5 million. I'm not going to put out a guess, but I don't think we're going to even reach the halfway point on the 5 million. The projects that we are requesting assistance within this are the Elbow K sewer improvement project, which will be our first delve into the Tantera sewer assessment process. And then we're also asking to institute a sewer station panel replacement program. As you know, many of the larger stations that we have in the city, Sands, Rockaway, KK49, these panels were put in place in some cases in the 90s. Some of them, the most recent one I believe was put in place in 2002. So you're looking at panels on some of our largest stations out there that are approaching 20 years old. And let's face it, these are stations that cannot fail, obviously. We felt like this was a great opportunity for us to try and get some grant money for these type of things. So this is what we put on the sewer side of this. Once I get those cost estimates, I'll be working with Gina to decide whether the city wants to include a 10 or a 20% match. The more we match, the more points we get, the higher our score, the more likely we are to get the grant money. I will be filling out the applications in this case with Dave Van Leer's assistance, based upon all the knowledge that I've gained through many of the webinars that I've went through over the last several months. Obviously, by the time we get to the budget workshops, I will have all these costs outlined, and they will be put in front of you for your approval during the budget process. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I do recommend approval.
All right. Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Alderman Ross.
So first of all, I appreciate the fact that you all are trying to aggressively pursue these. I think there's $350 million, if I understand that right, approximately at the state level for this. And I'm not sure if it's wastewater only or wastewater and freshwater, okay? But my point is this. Even if it is not a complete application, even if we don't have all the engineering done, we should still think bigger. There's probably going to be a lot of cities that either don't apply or apply with incomplete also, because no one's got enough, very few people have enough engineering projects sitting in their back pocket that they can complete an application. And so while I understand that that may limit our probability, I think that it's worth applying even though it may not be absolutely complete. And so I completely support what we're doing here, but when in the comments here that it'll be nowhere close to the 5 million, my recommendation is find a way, especially on the sewer side, to get close to the 5 million, if not every single dime of it, because with what we've got out at the estates, we need every single dime of it. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Any opportunity we have to go after grant money, I agree. But I know those applications can be challenging, so.
That Mike can be creative.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Alderman Becker.
Mike, does a smaller completed application carry more weight than a larger incomplete application?
Well, I mean, I don't think you're going to get a grant without a complete application.
Gotcha.
Just to give you a little bit more insight, we have been given 90 days from the time we turn the application in to include any additional documentation associated with any engineering assessments and those kind of things. We already have the one for the Tantera Estates, and we don't need to turn one in for the electrical panel one. But Dave still has to put together all of this work, all of this design, so that we can turn it in time. And when I sat down with Dave and we talked about this, and when we get to the next one, you're going to see we've got a lot more on the water side. But this was the capacity that they had. This was what we felt like we could get done within the timeline. I wish that they gave us more time. July 14th is a month from now. We don't have any more time. I will go back to Dave, and if there's anything else I can stuff in this, I certainly will. But this is what I was told we could do in the time that we had.
Well, I agree with Alderman Rucker and Ross, but I'd rather get something than nothing.
So let me ask one question for clarity. Can we submit more than one application per sewer site, for example?
No.
It can only be one? Okay. Okay, I'll leave it to your all's best judgment. I think there's a bunch of cities set in the exact same place. And if that's the case, then there may be funds again that come back up, because I don't think, and so that may be the best angle.
And I think you're right. I think there's going to end up being a second round.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion approved.
Alderman Ross, do I have a second? A second. Alderman Osteen, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Next, we have a resolution, 2022-03, a resolution of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, supporting the application for the Missouri Department of Natural Resources Financial Assistance Center State American Rescue Plan, ARPA, grant program for drinking water. Mike Welty again, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is the other side of this. This is the drinking water side. Obviously, I've already went through the details, so I'm just going to go through the projects that we're requesting here. The projects we're requesting on the water drinking side, there's several that we're gonna ask for. As you know, we're doing a water looping project later this year to get rid of some of the dead ends that we have. The one that we're requesting here is going to be the second water looping project that we're going to add into this grant. That one's going to be around the Hatchery Road area on the east side of town. Where also this summer, Dave Van Leer has started a manganese, I always say it wrong, I apologize.
Manganese.
Assessment for Swiss Village wells number 1 and 2. What comes out of that assessment is the next thing I'm adding in here. It'll be some type of filtration system that we'll be adding on the Swiss Village Tower site. So that we're gonna add in here. We're also, much like we were on the sewer side with the aging panels, we're dealing with aging well houses. We have roof problems on our well houses. We have door problems on our well houses. So, I was very thorough in my looking into this, and I was told that this absolutely meets the requirements of the grant, and we can add that in there. So I threw that in there as well. As you know, as Kevin has told you all, we continue to have problems with meter replacements. So we're going to throw that in there too. That doesn't require any type of assessment. That's just us giving them some quotes and explaining the age of our meters that we have in the ground. So that's another one that we can add in. And then the one I didn't think would be able to get in, but at the last minute they said it absolutely does work, is a mobile generator. I know I've told the board several times over the years, the only generators that we have, the only mobile generators that we have, don't work, haven't worked for years. We need to get a mobile generator back up and running so that we have the ability to provide power to our wells and towers if we need to, if we were to have some type of emergency. So that is kind of everything that we're gonna add in on the water side. Again, once I get all of that information together, I'll be going to Gina and we'll be discussing whether we wanna do a 10 or a 20% match. And again, I'll be filling out these applications. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker, do I have a second? Alderman Becker, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, resolution carries. Next, we have a motion to approve the purchase of a 2,000-gallon Jet A storage tank for Grand Glaze Airport from Numair Equipment in the amount not to exceed $45,346.53, replacing the previous approved motion for the purchase from the June 2nd, 2022 Board of Aldermen meeting. Ty Dinsdale.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Welcome back to the Airport Department soap opera. As you remember, on June 2nd, you approved the purchase of this 2,000-gallon storage tank through Numair Equipment. Unfortunately, after the board meeting and in the process of finalizing signatures for this contract, Numair discovered that they had made a mistake in the quote, and so they have sent me a revised quote, a revised quote, which is what we submitted in the amended packet for $45,346.53. Since then, we've had several phone conversations with Numair, and as of 3:30 today, I think I received another revised quote. This is their final answer. The final quote will be $40,276.53, which is a little bit of a discount on the second quote we received. Airport Department still recommends approval. This final quote is still far below our two other quotes we had from two other different companies, and we have worked with Numair in the past and had previously good results with them. I would recommend approval as stated, or if somebody would like to add an amendment to lower the amount not to exceed $40,276.53, or approve as stated in the amended agenda, and trust me that I will not spend over $40,000 in $276.
We need to amend it because it says not to exceed. So if he doesn't exceed, then he's fine.
The city attorney just advised we don't need to really do that because it already says not to exceed 45,000, so less than that's good. So anyway, comments or questions? Yes.
Is their original bid not binding on their part?
They didn't have the signature signed, no.
Oh.
I was
Didn't
explaining.
get to that point.
Yeah, it didn't get to that point. The quote that they'd sent me, they used a computer-generated quote program, and the actual price of the tank was $20,000, and they discovered that it was either entered or auto-corrected to $20 in the original quote. So the original quote was just shy of $20,000 short.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
But did I understand it's still far below the other quotes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir. Either comments or questions from the board?
I'll just say one thing. I actually had a good friend of mine that works for Numair, and I contacted him. And at that point in time, it sounded like they were just going to stand pat. And I kind of told him that, your guys' quote, I understand you screwed up and you don't want to lose money maybe, but you got to do something here. And I don't know how much impact he had. I didn't think he was going to have any impact, but he texted me back. I called Ty that they were going to come up with something better. And I think they got the message that at the end of the day, you can't leave a quote out there and then just say, well, we screwed up, you got to pay. And so I think they have tried to step up and do the best they can. And for that, I'll give them credit, even though I wish it was still $20,000 less. That's all I have.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Certainly.
Alderman Ross, you did help tremendously, so thank you very much. And I just wanted to point out to the board that the budget for this is $40,000, so we are still just slightly, but a little over budget. And I'm sure that Gina will be able to address that at a later date, but wanted to make sure the board did know that.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Ross, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Rose, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Next, we have a discussion item, road acceptance packet. Tara?
Well, okay, yes, I'm going to turn this over to Alderman Rucker.
Very good.
His name's not in the computer.
I only need to get
Why did
your
you
all's
put your
names on the elected body in the
Yeah, I think
computer.
so. That would be helpful.
Okay, you should have in your packet basically 4 sheets of paper that we're going to be going through. The main one we're going to be talking about is the last one, which is the roads, streets, and parks chart, which looks like this. Okay. The reason I asked this to be put on the agenda is because a number of years ago, 3, 4, 5, something like that, the board discussed this and came up with a kind of a plan on where to move forward. And since that time, we've been moving in those directions. It's nothing that's in writing, but because it's difficult to put it in writing, but there's been a number of things that have changed since then. Personnel. So I felt like we all need to make sure we are all on the same page, make sure that the board is still on that same page. The staff that wasn't here then can be aware of what our vision is and what we're looking for and there. So with that being said, when someone would want to bring their road into the city's inventory, if it's brand new, that's kind of really simple. That's not really what we're here to discuss, but just to go through that, here's the guidelines that they are supposed to follow, and that Carrie and the engineering people will work with and tell them, this is what the guidelines are. This tells you how to build this road. You've got this nice field here. This is what you do, and that's fine. I'm not asking to deal with that at all, and that's in place. But what we did deal with a number of years ago is those roads that are already built, that were built back in the 70s, 80s, 50s, 60s, who knows when, and houses were put up, and nothing like this was in place. So they just built them and did what they thought was the right thing to do, because there was no guidance, no standards, et cetera. Those roads many of those roads were not in the city. It was before the city was formed, matter of fact, and even after the city was formed, many of those roads were put in and weren't dedicated to the city. So now we have those roads that are being dedicated or turned over to the city, or we requested to be in the city. I'm very passionate on this one because of my previous history as a fire service. It's very nice to be able to have a plowed snow route when you're going to a structure fire and there's 12 inches of snow out there, and you're going along very, very good in a city street, and all of a sudden you've got a quarter mile to go that's a private road, and you've got to try to get those fire trucks back and forth up there to do their job, and they're in a foot of snow. That's, you might think, is that difficult, but try to do the same thing with an ambulance. Try to do now that same thing with a police car that's responding to a possible need for someone. So there needs to be accessibility, and in order to do that, we, the city, have the capability of making that work the best, I think, possible. So therefore, I've been passionate about trying to get roads brought into the city inventory. That is what started this all off a number of years ago, when we had discussion with the city engineer that said these were the guidelines, and we gave them instructions that we, the board, have the ability to not follow these guidelines. We, the board, have the ability to say, well, even though it's in our guidelines or our standards that the road has to be 10 foot wide for 400 to 1,500 people, we have the ability, the board, to say, well, you know, we can't get it. I mean, come down to my house where I live and I'm on a road that's 14 foot, you can't get no more. There isn't any more. And we have somehow, without really causing quite a cost to me in my yard, there's some people that we would be in their bedroom. The road is that close. So we identified this, that we, the board, would be willing to look at these things and be willing to do that. That's what we decided on. We didn't tie down a number to send to engineering and to our public works people, which are responsible for that. We just said we'd be willing to look at each one case by case, and that's kind of where we left it. Now, those of you that were involved with it at the time, if I'm misquoting something, please jump in. But that was our intent that we did, and we gave those parameters. Now, Obviously, I'm hoping Cochran will be able to online, or Mike will be able to convey this to them because they need to be aware of hearing this as well because they're involved in some of this stuff. Kevin is here tonight with our public works people that are obviously going to be involved in input in that. So, you know, even though these are the guidelines or the standards that we have set, I'm not asking the board to change them. This was just put here for your information. This is what staff has to follow. Staff cannot go out there and say, well, that road is a foot short of this, so we'll bring it in. No, they don't have that within their parameters. They have to follow these because this is the ordinance that we pass. But we as the board, when it is brought to us, can do that. We've done that. And hopefully we will continue to do that. And that's why I want to make sure that we're all on the same page because we have found some problems that we've identified in the process that the attorney and I have been discussing and some things that we want to make sure we can tweak this process. But we need to make sure that the board is still on the same line of willing to listen to those road projects or those roads that are smaller that we still can bring them in. We work with the special road districts on this and through them and bringing these roads in. The one little glitch we have is we have to get legal signatures earlier on than we have been. We've been doing some things with a handshake. You know, it's like, yeah. I got a bunch of people in my neighborhood. We all want my road to come in, and yeah, it's only 8 foot wide. Can we get this? Can we make this work? And things move on, and then all of a sudden we're at the tail end of the project, and my neighbor down the road says, "No, I'm not going to do it. I don't want it," and then that messes the whole project up, and we have expended time and maybe money, and we've done that and made the mistake. So we want to make sure we don't do that again. And we won't work through that process. So that's what I wanted to bring to you. I wanted to make sure that the board is still on that page, if they're still willing to do this, realizing that when we do this, it at some point in time, even though we're doing one road maybe every year or 2 roads a year, at some point in time, Public Works is going to be coming back and saying, wait a second, you've added more road miles to what we're taking care of. And we're going to have to remember that at some point we may have to allocate additional funding or additional resources because I don't know how many road miles they take care of now, but when the snow's falling, if all of a sudden we add a half or a quarter of a mile a year, a little bit, but all of a sudden after a number of years, that gets bigger. And we do need to consider that. You know, that's something that we just have to realize at some point we have to identify that. But does anybody have any questions or comments about this program?
I think this is a great idea, and I commend you for following through with it. And you commented, obviously there's a lot of old roads that they're built right up and there's hardly any right-of-way or anything. And so we'd have to take that into consideration with the width of the road, to do anything with it, just what you were saying. Because, I'm sure that there's some porches that are maybe right up by the roadside. But anyway, thank you for doing this.
Any other comments or questions?
Just real quick, I think what Kevin's saying here is he just wants to make sure we're all still on the same page. And I think we are, unless someone has anything. But we spent a little bit of time on this and back 3 or 4 years ago. And the idea is that the way this place was developed, there wasn't a lot of consistency. And so we need the ability, and Kevin's just making sure everybody's on the same page, to continue to take these as one-off. I had the opportunity last night to meet with Special Road District, and Mike was there, and I think we set a stage last night to enhance that partnership. I have a true passion to make sure that not only do we have less private roads, but we have no gravel roads in the city of Osage Beach where people live on them. So this is some of this, as long as everybody's okay, this will probably come to us sooner than later. So I'm glad you got us on the same page, and I hope that we can continue to work with the Special Road District. What was obvious last night, you mentioned this, Kevin, and it goes back to ledges, I believe. And that is that there has been a project out there for somewhere around 10 years where everybody agreed once that they wanted to do this project. And I don't know that if those agreements could be recorded, because what occurred is that it took so long. It took some time to do it, 2 or 3 years to get it going, and property transferred, and the new owner wasn't okay. And from a innovative or outside the box thing, maybe what we look at is making sure that those agreements that are formal become recorded somehow so that they become binding in the future. Because that has wasted a lot of people's time and tied up a bunch of public money, I think $100-some thousand for over 10 years that could have been utilized somewhere else. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Alderman Rucker. All right, last thing on our business is Osage Beach GIS presentation. Kevin Crooks, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and the board. We're going to hear shortly here from Thomas Ellinger. He's our utility locator and GIS technician. I want to warn you, Thomas is a nerd. And I mean that in the best way. I mean that in the best way, and I'll turn that over to him. He is going to run through our city's GIS system. Just a quick run through and explanation. Thomas, you good?
Mic issues, 1 second. Is it?
Test, test, test.
Just gotta talk loud.
Just talk loud.
Yeah, will do. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. My goal for this presentation is to get you familiarized to our city GIS processes. The agenda consists of a GIS overview, an asset field collection plan, field worker and desktop experience, pub work demo, a future expansion for city GIS, and concluding with a Q&A session. First, let me define GIS. GIS stands for Geospatial Information System. It is an information system that allows users to analyze, map, model, and query geospatial data. I would like to explain it as a living, breathing organism, and I will hopefully be able to show you that by the end of our presentation. The city consumes our GIS data through software created by Esri. Esri is a California-based company that is like Apple or Microsoft in their trades. Esri has dominated the GIS market and provides several quality products we use daily. ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro are both designed for data management and analysis, where Online is a web-based and Pro is desktop-based. Field Maps is used by our field workers, which I'll explain in greater detail later in the presentation. Hub and Survey 123 are different applications that are not currently being used, but hopefully will soon be. They allow developers to create different websites and surveys that interact with our employees and the public. Now that we have an understanding of GIS, we can talk about how we get our GIS data. Shortly after I was hired, I developed an asset field collection plan. The goal of this comprehensive plan is to determine how I will capture existing and new assets for all 3 departments in Public Works. Figure 1 shows the existing assets in GIS broken out by feature layers. An outsider looking at this figure might think, wow, the city has done a great job at maintaining their GIS data set. However, after a deeper dive into the data, the individual would find out that none of these assets were captured using advanced technology like a Trimble R2 that offers 2.8-inch positioning accuracy. Without this kind of accuracy, it makes finding assets in the field very difficult. Envision looking for a golf ball in the rough or in the woods that you didn't even see land. Furthermore, some of the feature layers have a smaller number of total assets, like meters. You should expect this number to be about the same number of addresses, but as you can see, we are pretty far off. The next step would be to create a plan of attack. The easiest way to develop a plan for this is an index map that spans across the city. Each individual index is roughly a half mile by 3/4 of a mile. On average, each index rectangle has 130 existing assets. And I'm forecasting that we have only inventoried about 43% of all total assets. After completion, I project roughly 300 assets per index rectangle. These index rectangles were created to be small enough to be manageable, but large enough to not have too many rectangles in total. The city is broken out to 168 index rectangles. Each one I project roughly 20 hours to complete. 20 hours to complete may seem like a large number, but some assets are very time-consuming to capture. For example, gravity sewer or electric for streetlights take a significant amount of time to capture because you need to hook up the locator and trace out each individual asset. I project 425 days until completion based on an 8-hour collection day, business days only, excluding holidays. As you can see, the completion would be roughly January 2024, but there is an asterisk. It states the project completion does not take into consideration my locating responsibilities. On a typical day, if I'm lucky, I will have about only 2 hours where I'm not locating. When taking into that consideration, the project would be pushed out to roughly January 2028.
Job security.
Enough with the collection plan. Let's talk about how we consume the data. The field worker experience is designed to be simple and readily available in the field. Each worker with an iPad can view or edit our data. The first demo tonight will be on field maps. This is an Esri-based product that allows the user to manipulate the data in the field as needed via an iPad. Okay, let's pretend we work for Rob in the transportation department. Our job is to go out to KK Drive and verify a street sign. Once logged in, the user can select the desired map for their job. We'll click on the streets edits map. Click on the desired sign, and now we have a picture of the sign. And now we also have the assets, the attributes, and the information about the sign. The nice thing about this is you can also view or edit any street department assets, like road shoulders. You can also select stormwater inlets. Or if we want to take a look at the streetlights, we can also view the streetlights. Now let's switch gears and pretend that we're a sewer worker. Okay, let's take a look at the sewer edits map. Here we can zoom over to Palisade Boulevard. Let's pretend we were sent out there to look at a grinder station. Here I can see the gravity lines coming into the grinder station. I can also see the Ameren meter and any information about the Ameren meter, a picture of it, and last but not least, we can see the station itself and all of the information behind it. Also, a picture. All of this is editable, and those changes can be made in the field. Better yet, water has the same abilities as well. Field Maps is great for the field worker. However, our foreman can use the desktop version, Arcgis Online. ArcGIS Online is where our data is currently hosted. It's a cloud-based server that allows us to edit, analyze, generate reports, and develop web applications using our data in real time. ArcGIS Online is technically a web-based software, whereas our ArcGIS Pro is more of a desktop version. On ArcGIS Online, like I said, we can view, we can modify, we can delete data like field maps. The big difference is that we can build web mapping applications to showcase different parts of the data. Now I'll demo ArcGIS Online. This is our organization's homepage. You can see a beautiful picture of the lake. Below the picture of the lake, you will see a group viewer and editor module. In the viewer group, you will see 4 viewers: sanitary, streets, water, and utility. Let's look at the street viewer. The viewer looks similar to what we saw in field maps. However, there are a few noteworthy differences. In ArcGIS Online, you can zoom into an area. You can select an area of assets. You can view the selected assets in an attribute table, similar to Excel. You can also print a map that then gets exported into a PDF that can be printed to any printer. Water and sewer have the same applications, but only display their respective data sets. The other beneficial piece in the viewer group is the dashboards. Let's click on the sewer dashboard. And as you can see, the dashboard consists of different modules and a map similar to field maps. As I zoom in the map, you can see that these modules are constantly updating. This feature can be very beneficial if the information is accurate and properly maintained. If not properly maintained, then we could be missing mains, manholes, you name it, which would result in inaccurate information. Therefore, the data collection plan is very important. We also have a dashboard for the transportation and water departments as well. ArcGIS Online allows for several different types of applications to be developed to view or edit the data. In the editor's utility group here, you will see the 3 departments. Let's check out the water editor. Here, it looks like field maps, very similar, but you're only viewing the water assets. Here we can go into a specific area. We can select a specific asset like a water meter. And here we can edit and maintain our data regarding that specific water meter. This is all very similar to field maps. It's just more of a desktop version. PubWorks is our current asset management software. In theory, PubWorks was supposed to be our bridge between GIS and the operation and maintenance management systems. The application offers 6 different modules on the iPad application: work orders, service requests, asset management, fleet management, and a GIS map viewer. I will not cover all 6 modules, just due to time. However, the map viewer is important to discuss. Now I would like to demo PubWorks in the GIS map viewer. When you first get into the map, you can zoom in and see something that resembles field maps or ArcGIS Online. We can also select an asset, and then we can see all of the attributes regarding this asset. You can create a new inspection, new request, new work order, or edit the existing attributes. These features are needed in an application to help us better track, manage, and forecast our department needs, which will allow us for better budgeting and a lot fewer surprises when planning. All of this data, all of our data lives on ArcGIS Online. Our data is cloud-based, if you remember from earlier. So the catch is that this data set and application does not communicate with our data. With this viewer, any changes made there will stay there. They will not communicate with our ArcGIS Online, field maps, any Esri product. PubWorks does not have the capability to communicate with our data, which is extremely important if we are going to invest all of the effort to upgrade our city GIS. Moving our GIS forward is very exciting to me and hopefully to all of you now. GIS is very beneficial, and I can foresee GIS being applied to the following departments, to name a few: airport, building, clerk, parks and recreation, planning, and the police. In Public Works, I have an Adopt a Spot program coming soon. This will allow the public to interact with us to help beautify the city's adopt a roundabout spots by allowing them to maintain these specific spots in the city. Later, I have plans to develop a citizen problem report application, which would allow citizens to report anything from storm inlets to streetlights that need maintenance. At the airport, I envision mapping fuel lines, tanks, hangars, all of the lights, and pavement, just to name a few. In the planning department, I envision a land use and zoning map that is not a PDF file. You can easily update and display the data to the public. Lastly, in the police department, we could start mapping incidents, arrests, traffic stops, which would allow us to figure out where hotspots are in the city. In conclusion, GIS has the capability to be involved in every department, making the daily tasks for our employees easier, while making what our city does more transparent to the public. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board, or Kevin? Did you have anything?
No, I was just going to ask the same thing.
Okay. Alderman Osteen.
Yes, I do have a question. Thomas, you really are a nerd.
That's a statement.
Yes. Going back to the Esri, there were two applications that you said we weren't utilizing. Is that because they're not applicable to what we're trying to do, or we just haven't dug into those applications yet?
We just haven't reached into that area yet, time being a big constraint, but we do have the ability, and there are several things like the Adopt a Spot program or this citizen report program. Those are items that would then utilize those two applications.
So there's a lot more potential. We just haven't developed it yet or delved into it. So
correct.
But good for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Rucker.
I just want to make a comment. A number of years ago, 15 or so, I attended the National Fire Academy. One of the courses that I took up there was a three-week course on disaster management. This type of stuff here was discussed as how valuable it was, and we had a mock disaster of a big city area, and we played different roles. And let me tell you what, it was so nice to be able to have something like this at our fingertips. If you can imagine Joplin. We saw a lot of Joplin. Where's the water lines at? now? And where do they go to turn the water meter off or the water line off that's got a busted in it because the tree stuck down it from the tornado and the gas lines and those things? So when you have those kinds of events, this is very, very valuable. Even on a smaller scale, a major building collapse, this can be very valuable to where is that water and sewer and gas and all the things. And I realize we don't have gas in the city, but there's gas within our city. So there's a lot of value to this besides, I realize, the asset management, but I'm not really interested in it. I'm more interested in the emergency side. That's where I come from.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much. All right, now we're going to move on to staff communications and then communication from the members of the board. So Gina Woods.
Just a couple things. I know Carrie Bell's not here. This is the time of year where you see a lot of management and staff vacationing, everything from Memorial Weekend to Labor Day. So over the next several weeks, there's a lot of us that are overlapping, and she's on vacation this week through next week, or today through next week. But she was awarded, and I know you guys got my email, but I really wanted to say it publicly, the Missouri GFOA, I just lost my Excellence in Government Award. So I know I sent that email out. It was very close to the award that the city got for her assistance in preparation of the financial award, so I didn't want those confused. Years of service, professionalism, her leadership, and her involvement with GFOA is really what contributed that. So I wanted to make that public announcement, and I apologize I missed the last meeting to do that. The other next update is just kind of understand the next steps. I appreciate moving through the timeline since we did get the approval for hiring that last consultant that we need to help us through this TIF project. Staff will be working on a letter to bring the deposit and the funds up to date per the funding agreement. Based on the timeline we have expended a certain percent, we're encroaching on their funding agreement standards, but with this new added consultant, just so you know that we'll be working on that to bring them up to ensure that services are paid by the developer. Other than that, as of next Wednesday afternoon, I will also be on vacation, and so I won't see you for the 27th, although I am sad, and if I have service 9,000 feet elevation in the mountains, I am going to watch the 27th meeting. but I will not be here for that since I'd already had this scheduled. But so have a good 4th of July, and I will likely see you guys after the holiday.
All right, thank you. Mike Welty.
Yeah, I just want to thank the board for their support of these resolutions. This is big for us. There's a lot of stuff that we're asking for in these grants. If we can get it all, and even if I can stuff some more into it, I will, but if we can get it all, it's going to be a huge step forward for us with some of our infrastructure. And the other comment I wanted to make in reference to Alderman Rucker's discussion about the private roads, I believe sometime in July, probably the second meeting in July, if I can get it all together, I am going to be bringing a private road discussion that I've been working on with Gina and some with Alderman Ross to the board to just discuss kind of our thoughts on your priorities moving forward with private roads and our partnership with the Special Road District. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Tara Barrett.
I'm good, thank you.
All right, Carrie Patterson.
Yeah, well, I just apologize for running around crazy earlier. Apparently we had something burn out in the chiller, in our air conditioning, on that side of the building, which includes our...
Thank you, Carrie, for playing building official while we were on.
And since Ron isn't here, I was running around, so I apologize for that. I was getting the ladies over in dispatch cooled off in our servers, which is the most important thing. So, but they came, Geotherm, our company, came from Lebanon. We're here inside of an hour and had us all fixed up, and so they've been real good to us. So that's all I have. I apologize.
Very good. Thank you. Kevin Crooks.
Thanks again, Thomas, for putting together the GIS demo for us. Just a quick update on the SCADA system that was approved by the board some weeks ago. We were looking forward to them coming on Monday, starting to get boots on the ground and get that system implemented. However, partly because of my fault, I keep changing the screens in the HMI, the human interface machine screens, and so they pushed me back to July 11th, but we'll get there. And other than that, PW's been slugging through the heat, drinking a lot of water. That's all I got. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Ty Dinsdale, Airport.
Yeah, one quick update on the Lacey Fine Airport apron project. At the risk of jinxing myself, they have been furiously pouring concrete the last several nights, and I do believe they won't be completely finished by July 4th, but I believe that the ramp will be available for parking, so it's looking good.
Very good. All right, thank you. Officer O'Day?
Nothing.
All right. All right, the board. Let's go. Alderman Rucker.
Yes, Mayor. Members of the board, I do have an item, actually two items I want to discuss. One is, and they both have to do with the TIF that we are working through and working on. The special meeting is going to be occurring on the 27th. I too will not be here in town. I'll be between Vancouver and Juneau. In the water, not swimming, but floating in a boat. But I am working very diligently to try to be able to be at the meeting by Zoom. That's the mission. But as we all know, with technology, sometimes it doesn't work. So I wanted to do my due diligence, and I provided the board and the attorney with some of my input that I felt I would like to see. And you were given the draft, you were given the third piece of it tonight, just right before the meeting. Basically, if you look at what was given to you, if you'll notice, basically in a nutshell, if you just look at question number 1, just for example, the black in the first portion was my question or my concern or my issue. That I forwarded on to the attorney, who then sent this on to Mark, and I can't
Spikerman.
Spikerman, thank you. I can't pronounce Mark Spikerman, and this was his response. And then the next black line in bold is my response back to that, which is my what my thoughts are. And just for example, with that, well, probably a better example is if you go down and look at item number 4. There's a request for sales tax exemption for the purchases made within the city limits. That's what I'm wanting to put that stipulation. They are asking, they've indicated in this TIF agreement that they are wanting to use the city's tax exempt certificate, which means they pay no sales tax and they pay no sales city and state sales tax. I was okay with that as long as it's within the city. That's my opinion, and I wanted to be able to put it that way. And Mark came back and said that, well, you know, state law exemptions, it applies throughout the whole state. Okay, I realize it does apply to the whole state, but in our redevelopment agreement, which is, I believe, where it would be, I wanted to say they can only utilize our state certification to be exempt from taxes in the city. Make them purchase stuff in the city. If they're not going to purchase in the city, no, I want to drive that business to the city. That's just an example, but these are the items that I have projected or presented with my response. I'll be happy to visit with anyone. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, though, I'm westbound and down and heading to San Francisco and going from there. If there's any of them that you strongly think that I'm way out in left field on, okay, I'd be happy to discuss it and everything. If not, hopefully the board can support these. Typically what occurs, for those that haven't been through this before, is the redevelopment agreement has taken us 30 to 90 days to put together, because they would go back and put everything down in writing and go back and forth and back and forth. As we all know, this one here is asking us to move quickly, and, you know, in a week and a half, they want us to approve the redevelopment agreement. Well, we don't have time for a workshop, but these are the items that I wanted to include in it. So I wanted to share that with the board, and again, I hope to be able to zoom in, but even if I do, as you all know, it may be challenging to communicate still and have that conversation. It's not like being here in person, and I just wanted my input to be made. So if there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Okay.
I have one comment.
Alderman Ross.
So my comment is this: I think that, first of all, I appreciate what Kevin's done here. I've had a lot of these different questions spinning around in my mind about this for a long time, and I think Kevin got us on the right track of how to, as a board, to potentially affect the development agreement that's coming so fast at us. And at this point, all I can say is I don't have any concerns with any things that Kevin's requesting here, and I'm not sure how we can do that, but I think that we should make not only Mr. Spikerman, if anybody has any concerns with these things, we should hammer that out. But as a board, I think that if we could make Mr. Spikerman and the developer aware of these things, then it may, in my mind, be a much more effective process versus, oh, well, we didn't get what we wanted on the last night before the day before the final, you know, walk away time frame of the contract that they've talked about with Simon, and it might help the process. So, but I don't know what other people think here.
Anyone else? Alderman Becker.
I agree with Alderman Ross. Thanks, Kevin. You put a lot of work into this. I would also add that, in my opinion, if it's a bonding situation and the city has no recourse against the developer, I'm not in favor of bonding. I'll just be real clear. And maybe that's a little off topic, but it goes along with some of the other things you're asking. And again, if it is a bonding situation, there has to be wording in it that the city is not morally or legally obligated to repay in a default situation, period. So I think I sent that on to Ed. So I'd just like to add those two items to Kevin's list.
I agree. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Alderman Schuman.
One more item. I just want to just let one more item. Just for your information, if you read the newspaper from the accounts of the TIF commission meeting, there was a lot of good material, but there was some material in there that was not correct.
That's right.
I've had conversation with Dan Fields, and I've sent him some information supporting telling him that there was some misinformation in there, and some other information to make him aware of what the TIF program and the application and a lot of information there that is all public knowledge. And he will be printing a retraction on Friday stating that there was stated in error, and plans on trying to be able to put additional information together so it's available before the next meeting to bring the public aware of some of the other issues that are involved with this and everything. So hopefully our media coverage will be more thorough than what it was. And I know Dan tried to and just did his best, but he needed some help, and I provided that to him.
All right, thank you.
That's all. Thanks.
All right, Alderman Schuman.
Just wanted to say thank you, everybody, again, with Kevin too, for all the work putting in with this, because this is a very big, the TIF process is very big, it's very overwhelming, so it's a lot of steps to it, so it's kind of nice to see, like you said, being able to put into words the questions that we can't all quite figure out exactly how to ask and who to ask. And then also to Thomas, thank you for the presentation. I actually know a little bit more than I want to know about GIS from my husband being working on surveying and engineering, so I understood quite a bit of it, and that is an important feature, so it's kind of nice to know that we have something like that with this city.
All right, thank you. Alderman Becker.
I was going to wish everybody a happy 4th of July, but I guess we'll see most everybody before then. Maybe not staff, so happy 4th of July. Kevin, happy 4th of July. And we'll see everybody a week from Monday.
Yeah. Alderman Osteen.
I have a statement I'd like to read. This is not directed at one single individual or actually to address a specific issue. It's just something that I thought, which actually I thought about last week, but it seems kind of fitting with a lot of things we have on our agenda right now. Sometimes the solution to a problem may not be the solution we had anticipated. But if it is the only solution that has presented itself, instead of trying to reject that solution and letting the problem persist, we need to find ways to work with that solution to bring an end to the problem. We as representatives of the city, be it as members of management, heads of departments, or members of this board, need to look at solutions as a whole and not as fragments for the betterment of the city and for our community. That was all. But it came back to basically looking at, we sometimes tend to focus on the small details without looking at the bigger picture. Small details can be fixed, but sometimes when you focus on them too much, you will lose the bigger picture. That's all I had to state.
All right, thank you. Alderman Morose.
Well, also, I'd like to commend Alderman Rucker on this format, because I've certainly, in my own mind, have had several questions and have not answered them either. But thank you for doing that. And talking about what was published this morning, I almost drove off the road because I was listening to the news. And again, it was not bad news, it was just erroneous. I mean, talking about the TIF. And I immediately got on the phone and got a hold of Gina. And so that I presume you got a hold of the radio station to correct that.
Well, they might still need to correct a few things, but yeah, kind of the same thing with Kevin. They got dates wrong and,
Yeah. Anyway, it was a little exciting. But thank you again, Alderman Rucker. That was very, very informative. Appreciate it. And have a good trip. That's it.
All right, Alderman Ross.
Also, thanks so much to Kevin, but also I want to recognize, I think, Gina and the mayor and probably Ed, and if I'm missing anybody, but this TIF process has been very challenging. I'm pretty sure each of your all's days have been much different than you expected every day as you rolled into work. And so I appreciate and applaud you for that. And I'm glad that you all and not me right at the moment dealing with this from a day-to-day standpoint. I did want to ask at Public Works, how are we at sewer staffing?
Sewer staffing is very good. We are 9 of 10 and holding strong, so we're doing real well.
Good. And then police?
We're 3, 2.
if everybody passes and accepts offers, Cindy said that there was the 2, which I call that substantially full because we've kind of ran down average of 2 for the last several years, even pre-COVID. So that is something to celebrate.
So we haven't made, and that's great, but I think that's what I heard about a month ago, so we haven't made any progress, is that right? Okay, that's okay, I was just wondering where we
Officers
were.
I tend to lose track of because I'm more worried with 911. So I let Chief
So have we
worry.
made any progress there?
We've got 2 in there now and they're in the training program, so.
That's 2 additional to what, of the 2 that we had?
Yeah.
So we're at 5 and it should be 9?
We're at 6.
6 and it should be 9.
With the 2 that are,
Training.
so with the 2 training, we're at 6, leaves 5 more. So, yeah, we need quite a bit more.
Okay, so I'm trying to keep track of this too. What is the head count at the 911 side?
6. Should have a total 11.
11.
Okay, the head count approved is 11.
The budget, yeah, it's budgeted for 11 positions and we're at 6 now.
Okay, good progress, thank you.
And I will get, I have talked to other trainers outside the area and working on possibly, because we can only train 2 currently, because I only have 2 trainers. So I'm working with another agency in hopes that maybe they can help us.
Good.
They're not in this area, they're a little outside of the area. But that is something I'm just started talking to him about yesterday, matter of fact. So
Good, I hope
if
that
that
works.
works out, then I can hire another 1 or 2, get them in a simulated environment, and then when these 2 are done, move those 2 in, hopefully. That's the plan, we'll see.
Great, nice work and improvement. And then lastly, hope everybody enjoys all these vacations you're taking. Enjoy it. It's been a tough year, I realize, and a challenging year, and it probably will remain that way. But please check out, don't check your email, don't check your phones, relax, enjoy, and come back recharged. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. A few things I want to say. I know it's hot, but I just want to tell you this has been a challenge. But I'll tell you what, and we've had this talk in my office with many of you, this whole TIF progress, everybody talks about how different it is or how challenging it is. To me, this is all normal. I've done a lot of research. A year ago, I knew nothing about the TIF. Support the Fosters. Nobody that I talk to wants that mall to fail. Everybody wants that thing redeveloped. They love it. They appreciate what they're trying to do. As mayor, I have responsibilities when I'm provided information, good, bad, or indifferent. It's my responsibility to provide it to the staff, to the aldermen, to the developers, to the attorneys, and we've been fully transparent on this entire process. We will see how it plays out. My role, I keep telling everybody, until it's 3-3 Judgment Day, I'm in the position where I don't vote on this, but I'm totally in support of someday that mall being developed. I want to see the process go through properly. I want it to go through without a lot of challenges as far as risky challenges. I just want a fair process. I'm learning about this. For any developer out there when it comes this way, please come to us, find out the roles of the TIF policy, what they need to do. I've told them that we want pro-development, pro-entrepreneurship, pro-growth, and as we move forward, just know the Osage Beach does want people to develop here, and we'll do our best to help them along the way, and sometimes it's not the answer they want to hear, but I'm still in hopes that someday that mall can be, and this process is not over. We're still moving forward, so I appreciate everybody's input, and if you have any questions or comments or want to provide me information, my door's always open. So with that being said, thank you very much, and could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Alderman Becker, Alderman second, Alderman Rucker. Meeting's adjourned, folks. Thank you very much.